going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 2 of What If Deku Stayed Quirkless. And now, let's begin. We cut to see a hallway which is in the UA school building. Shinso was just packing his things to go home as Bakugo would pull up, noticing this kid named Shinso. However, Bakugo knew who Shinso was and knew how Shinso had a villainous quirk. He had bullied him after all in elementary school, so Bakugo decided it would be fun to pick on somebody, as it had been a couple of months since he had been able to pick on Deku. He didn't know who any of the people in Class 1C was, so he had no clue Deku even made it into UA at all. So Bakugo would come up to Shinso and would knock him down, as he would then Hey, something very rude to Shinso. You think you can be a hero, huh? With your villainous quirk? You'd be better off just becoming a villain. Why don't you stop trying to become a hero at this hero school and just leave altogether? As Bakugo would then turn his back to Shinso and would walk away. Shinso would be kind of confused at this as he forgot who Bakugo was. It had been in elementary school after all, so he would just brush this off and would walk away. However, this action did not go unnoticed by any other people. There was one person who did notice this, and this was Shota Aizawa, who would soon become Shinso's teacher slash mentor. So Shota Aizawa would tell Shinso how he could possibly get into Class 1A or Class 1B and possibly even become a hero. And this was through winning the UA Sports Festival or doing it very, very well in it, and so he could train very early with him and his other pupil, which just in fact been or was Izuku Midoriya. So this would begin where Shinso would start to train with Izuku as well for the next week, building teamwork as they would promise each other that they would team up in the sports festival since they both had very weak powers. I mean, Izuku didn't have a power at all, and all Shinso could do was brainwash somebody if they answered one of his questions. So they had to think outside of the box in order to win this sports festival. And so that's exactly what they did. So the morning of the sports festival, they would both get up bright and early and would meet each other at this training grounds, as they would then promise each other to place very well in the sports festival and both become heroes, as they would then walk onto the UA campus and would then walk into the classroom and would wait for their teachers to start the class and for them to head on a bus and travel to the UA Sports Festival, where it would be held in a coliseum. So an hour would pass as the teacher would finally showed up. They had actually gotten there very, very early, so they had to wait a pretty long time. So when the teacher showed up, they would then just be happy, as the teacher would then tell all of the students that they will be given a PE uniform and that they all need to head onto the bus down in sector this, where it was a part of the road where Class 1C would be going. So Izuku and Shinso would head out along with the rest of their classmates and would hop onto the bus, as they would then travel to the UA Sports Festival, and where they would then be placed into a locker room and where they would end up being called out onto the field. This is where Class 1B would then be called out onto the field after them. And then 5 minutes would pass as if just gathering some sort of momentum by the crowd, as then the teacher would announce very loudly, this would happen to be Midnight announcing it at a podium, that Class 1A has just arrived, as Class 1A would walk out onto the field as the entire crowd would cheer. These were the students that were going to become the future heroes. This was this person's time to see these young pupils in action and to see them become heroes and develop as heroes. So this was a crazy occasion as the crowd just roared in excitement. However, most of the classes were just angry at this. The crowd didn't really seem to care all about these other classes. They didn't even seem to care about Class 1B. It's all Class 1A this and Class 1A that. This would help motivate these other classes to stay in the fight and try to beat Class 1A, and possibly even Class 1B, even though it's the lower team. However, they were morely focused on Class 1A. These were the people that were supposedly better than them, and they didn't like that. They just wanted everyone to be equally seen in Class 1A. So they would do this in sort of a weird way by winning the UA Sports Festival. So Midnight would announce that the first event is going to be a race around the Coliseum, or around this different other Coliseum building, where they would race around as there would be different obstacles, including a path with a bunch of robots, including three zero pointers, a minefield, and just a bunch of little rocks you had to hop from one to the other continuously without just staying there, or they would just end up falling. So they would all be put into this weird kind of hallway type thing as the doors would open and Midnight would yell go, along with Present Mike in over the microphone or speaker. So the entirety of the UA's first years would then start to run out, causing a stampede. So anyone who supposedly fell would just get crushed by this. As from there, Izuku would start to run with his insane speed that he had built up through training. Sure, it wasn't as fast as someone like Todoroki, who was using his ice to just glide along the ground, so Izuku was just right in third place. Bakugo didn't even notice Izuku. He was focused right on Todoroki. That was the person ahead of him, and that was the person he was going to beat. So Izuku decided to just keep on running. He would go behind Bakugo and Todoroki and would just allow them to carve the way, defeating as many robots as they would, as Izuku would just run along this path that they would carve, not needing to do anything. So this would slow Bakugo and Todoroki down, wasting all of their stamina, while Izuku would still have a lot of his stamina, not needing to fight. So Izuku would continue on his run, as it would then come to this weird type of hopping section, as Izuku would see basically Todoroki and Bakugo had already just beaten it. It was quite simple. Bakugo pretty much just flew over it with his explosions, while Todoroki would just create an ice path. Why did I mess up saying that? An ice path which he just used to glide along that. So Izuku would see if the ice was sturdy enough, and it was. It hadn't even melted yet. It was very, very cold and solid. So Izuku decided to slowly walk across it, but not too slowly where he'd get too far behind. This is where he lands at the minefield, as he would then start to do the exact same thing he had done in the anime, as he would end up seeing this random chunk of metal sticking out of the ground, as he would pick it up and start placing a bunch of mines in this pile, as he would then slam this piece of metal down, as he would propel himself forward in front of Bakugo and Todoroki right across the finish line, as Present Mike would then come over the speaker and would then announce to the entire crowd, and Class 1C's Izuku Midoriya has come out in front with first place in the first event of the UA Sports Festival. The crowd would cheer just in excitement. Someone in Class 1C, not even in one of the hero classes, somehow managed to beat all of the people in the hero classes. That's just unheard of. And it was actually the first time in UA history that this has ever happened. So the crowd was shocked that they just witnessed history, or UA history. It was crazy. As this is where Present Mike would then come over the speaker and would then give an added bit of information. And this young man, Isuku Midoriya, the person who finished first, is also miraculously quirkless. You could call him some sort of quirkless wonder. Somehow he was able to beat all the other kids with quirks in the race. Isn't that just insane? The crowd would just go completely silent. They were shocked. And kid from Class 1C had just beaten Class 1A and B in the race, and not only that, but he was quirkless too? This was insane. Some of the crowd would cheer, while some of them were just angry. How dare the future generation of heroes with these almighty and powerful quirks just let these this Quirkless kid beat them. How dare they do that? That's insane. They should be ashamed of themselves. So basically, half of the crowd was cheering, and half of them were just angry. So they didn't really know what to think. The crowd was basically just mixed emotions. However, this wouldn't really last long, as most of them would later come to the conclusion, why are we being angry at some random high schooler? He's quirkless. He's had a rough life. We should be cheering for this kid. He is able to beat all these quirk kids, and perhaps he could even be the first quirkless hero. There was many quirkless people in the crowd, including some of his classmates who chose not to participate in the race and in the UA Sports Festival, just wanting to watch it instead and watch Izuku and Shinso compete. So Izuku would then sit and wait for the rest of the entire race to finish, as he would be told to go back to the locker rooms, as they would have a 10-minute gap before the next event, as they needed time to set up everything. And this next event would happen to be a cavalry battle, and Izuku would end up getting to choose his teammates first, since he had gotten first place. I mean, that's the least they could do, seeing as he had a 10 million point headband. So Izuku tried to gather up as much people as possible. However, they knew he had that 10 million points and were quite scared, as they didn't want to join him, seeing it as a liability and that most people would just target him. However, his promise with Shinso he made during his training stuck through, as Shinso would join his team, as they would then gather up to other people from Class 1C and were able to just try to keep their headband. Izuku would try to pull out some random trickery, as he was able to nag a bunch of random headbands his fellow Class 1C members have given him. They tried to make it to the cavalry battle. They had a plan that they made on the bus going to the sports festival. Izuku knew the events, the race, the cavalry battle, and then the 1v1 tournament. He told them that if most of them could get into the cavalry battle, then they could all give their headbands to Izuku, and he could be able to hide the 10 million point headband and would be able to pass into the 1v1 tournament. No quirkless person has done that in UA history. Sure, a quirkless person was able to very hard to sneak through into the cavalry battle, just barely getting in the race. However, they would end up being eliminated, not even making it to the 1v1 tournament. So making it to the 1v1 tournament, this was crazy. No Quirkless person had ever done that. And Izuku was the first Quirkless person and even the first Class 1C person to finish first place in the race. So Izuku was already just establishing new feats. So the class would band together and would start to help Izuku, as President Mike would then come over the loudspeakers and would say, "Oh my gosh, what's this? Most of the students from Class 1C are teaming up together to help Izuku Midoriya. One of He's the person who finished first place in the race, which I assume most of you know by now," as the crowd would be shocked, as they would then form a circle around Izuku and would start protecting him from any person coming at them, as it was basically just forming a wall, as they would maintain this position for over 30 minutes, causing Izuku's team to get first place in the cavalry battle. And this is where the 1v1 tournament starts. Izuku and Shinso would go back to their locker rooms and would be congratulated by their teacher for making it into the 1v1 tournament, as they would then be told they now have 20 minutes of rest. And after that, they will either be selected for the first round or one of the other rounds that they will have to fight. And if they win, they will move up into the second round, which is like the semifinals. Then if they win that, they move to the semifinals, and then the finals if they win the semifinals. So that's basically how it's going to go. It's basically a bracket type of 1v1 tournament. Of course, Shinso and Izuku already knew this thanks to Aizawa. So they would be sitting there waiting as the 20 minutes would then pass. Izuku and Shinso would stand up and would walk out onto the field to see the matchups. Shinso was versing some random kid, while Izuku was versing a kid in Class 1A named Shoto Todoroki. Izuku would think none of this, as he would end up being the first match to end up starting, so they would start out the 1v1 tournament. It was kind of a lot of pressure, but not for Izuku, as Izuku would step up onto the arena waiting for his opponent, Todoroki. Todoroki would step up onto the arena and then would glare at Izuku and would then speak. Just because you're quirkless doesn't mean I'll go easy on you. Izuku would then laugh, just wondering how Todoroki thought this would be a means of intimidation. It sure looked like Todoroki was trying to intimidate Izuku, and it wasn't working. Quite the opposite. It was making Izuku laugh. It was funny how Todoroki tried to intimidate Izuku, at least in Izuku's mind, that is. So Izuku would end up waiting for the match to start, as it would. Todoroki, not wasting any time, would then send a massive icicle right at Izuku. However, Izuku would dodge and would then take one step towards Todoroki. As Todoroki would send a massive iceberg at Izuku, Izuku would dodge this and would take another step Todoroki. Rinse and repeat as Izuku would continue to get closer to Todoroki very, very slowly, dodging every single attack Todoroki would throw at him. And Izuku knew the closer he got to Todoroki, the higher alert he had to be, as the closer he was to him, the harder he was going to be to dodge Todoroki's attacks, as they were going to be very, very fast the closer he was to him. So Izuku would remain on high alert up until he was very, very close to Todoroki, as Todoroki would then send another ice attack, as Todoroki would then collapse to his knees. He was suffering from frostbite. This is exactly what Izuku saw in the anime, which caused Izuku to want Todoroki to use his fire side, as Todoroki would have surely lost the fight if he continued just using ice attacks. And it was like a good 100 feet away from Todoroki, so Izuku had to take almost 90 to 95 steps to get to Todoroki, which this is around 95 attacks. So Todoroki would be suffering from massive stamina loss, as he would then fall to his knees, as Izuku would get there and would punch Todoroki across the face, as we would then see Endeavor yell at Todoroki, "Get up, Todoroki! You are ruining the Todoroki name by losing to a quirkless brat!" Todoroki would try to stand up, but it wouldn't work, as he would then feel a punch to the gut, sending him upwards, as Izuku would then grab Todoroki's head and smash it into his knee, knocking Todoroki out unconscious. As Izuku would then be said he had won the match with a knockout win, as he would then go on to the semi-finals, as Izuku would be smiling that he had managed to beat somebody so powerful like the son of Endeavor, as Izuku would then walk off, as he would be congratulated by his class, as Shinso would also win his round in the tournament as well, moving up, just like Izuku had. As Izuku would then be told what his next round matchup was going to be. Izuku would win this match with relative ease, as it had no significance towards the what if at all. He had won it very easily, and this is where the semi-finals begins. Izuku versus Tenya Ida, and Shinso versus Bakugo Katsuki. Whoever won those two matches, the winner would go on to the finals. Izuku's match would start off with Ida running circles around Izuku as if to try to confuse him. Although Izuku would stay calm in this situation, not even caring what Ida was doing, as Ida would then come in for a kick, which Izuku would easily grab Ida's leg and would then slam Ida into the ground, which would cause massive damage to Ida and would also put him at a major disadvantage. He had gotten injured with Izuku's blow to him, so now that he was injured, Izuku could very, very easily win this fight. So Izuku would then throw a punch at Ida, so Ida would very narrowly try to dodge Izuku's blow, which would then cause Ida to dodge right into one of Izuku's punches, which was one of the punches that contributed to Izuku's knockout against Todoroki. So Ida would then end up being thrown back, knocked out, as Izuku would then be told he's going on to the finals, the first quirkless person to go on to the finals. Will he win it? That is the question that all of the people in the crowd are asking. Will this quirkless kid win against somebody with a quirk, and that a powerful one? They had saw what Shinso had done in the rounds. However, they knew Bakugo had seen what Shinso had done and knew that Bakugo, with his very flashy explosion quirk, would very, very obviously win the fight. So Izuku was pretty much waiting to see who would win, watching it as he would then see Bakugo take out Shinso in a single blow. It was very, very easy. The explosion hit Shinso square in the chest, sending him flying backwards. He had not gotten knocked out. It was just an arena knockout. He had been knocked out of the arena. He was still conscious, but he was out of bounds. So Shinso would be quite pissed off and would end up walking up to Izuku after the fight and would then tell Izuku something that Izuku knew he needed to do. As Shinsu would then pass Izuku, Shinsu would say something to Izuku. Beat that damn jerk, which Izuku would promise Shinso he would do, as Izuku would step up onto the arena, as Bakugo would then be glaring daggers at Izuku. This was it. The child who had bullied Izuku for years was now going to be facing off against Izuku. The bullied versus the bully. This, why did I say it like that? The bully versus the bullied, which Izuku knew this, and he needed to beat Bakugo. Bakugo, however, didn't want to be beaten by some random quirkless kid and knew he had to put Izuku in his place and show Izuku how much of a pebble he really was in the eyes of the world. So Izuku would stare right back at Bakugo with the same intensity Bakugo was doing to Izuku. As the match would begin, with Bakugo launching himself right at Izuku, with sparks flying in his hands, about to send a massive explosion barreling towards Izuku. However, right as Bakugo reached the side where Izuku was, he noticed Izuku wasn't there. In Bakugo's anger, he had failed to notice that Izuku had moved right behind him, as Izuku would then slam his leg right into the back of Bakugo, sending him flying down into the ground, creating a huge just ball of smoke and debris from Bakugo landing into the arena, which would cause some of it to just pop out. It had broken under the impact of Bakugo. As Bakugo would get up now in a full rage, how dare somebody like Izuku just put him down like he's some sack of dirt. He will not let that happen again, Bakugo would think, charging right at Izuku. He couldn't let some random quirkless scum beat him. That's just crazy and should never happen, Bakugo would think, launching himself forward right at Izuku, not learning from his mistakes, as Izuku would then duck down under Bakugo's attack and would punch Bakugo right in the stomach. Right now, it was looking like a very lopsided fight. Izuku was winning very, very easily, and that was very clear. So Izuku would walk up to Bakugo, as Bakugo would be down on the ground, trying to get up but not managing to. As Izuku would then tell Bakugo that it wasn't worth getting injured even further and he should just stay on the ground. However, Bakugo didn't like this, using this as some tiny last ditch effort and motivation to send one explosion right at Izuku. Now, Izuku walking up to Bakugo had let his guard down as this explosion had hit Izuku. As the crowd thought, is this the Quirkless kid's gonna be a goner now? He had just been gotten hit by a cork that is insanely strong. He's going to be dead. So they started to look on in fear as if trying to not see a dead body, even though they were all staring at the arena. However, what they saw shocked them. A knocked out Bakugo and an Izuku standing there with his arms looking severely burned. Izuku would just laugh the pain off, saying just ouch, that really hurt Bakugo, and that move was all for nothing. As Izuku would walk off, as the entire crowd would erupt into cheers. It was insane. A Quirkless person had now won the UA Sports Festival. This might even be the first Quirkless hero in a few short years. This was insane, the entire crowd would think, as they would then start chanting Izuku's name. It was insane. It was crazy. Never before had something like this ever happened, and Izuku was just smiling at this. They wanted Izuku to become a hero. They knew for the greater good of the community and Japan that if it wanted to thrive and have more heroes that were better, they needed Quirkless heroes that strove to fight, strove to become better heroes, and better heroes than people with quirks. They needed Quirkless heroes so that the global death rate of Quirkless people would drop. It was because of all the bullying that Quirkless people had gotten, is because this death rate would skyrocket. And now that Izuku had become the champion of the first year UA Sports Festival, maybe all of that would change, most of them would think, as Izuku would then be given a gold medal, signifying that he had won the UA Sports Festival, as Izuku would then smile to himself and would walk off, as him and his classmates would then celebrate, as it wasn't just his win, it was his entire class's win. At least that's what he told them. It truly wasn't his win without their help. Without their help, he might have possibly not even been able to get to the 1v1 tournament. So he just said, "This is not just my win. This is all of our wins. This is Class 1C's win." As they would then go off to celebrate, as the celebrating would end with Izuku going home with his gold medal. As a couple weeks would pass, he knew it was going to take a couple weeks before he would get invited into Nezu's office to be told whether or not he was in Class 1A or not. And Izuku knew he was most likely going to be in Class 1A. It was, of course, he was going to be in Class 1A. If not, it would just be a crazy mistake. Nezu saw what Izuku did out there in the sports festival. Of course Nezu saw. He was watching it with his own eyes. Izuku would walk into Nezu's office and would then sit down, as Nezu would then speak. "Izuku, what you did in the UE Sports Festival was truly remarkable. However, I regret to inform you that I cannot put you in Class 1A, nor can I put you in Class 1B. It is simply just too dangerous for somebody of quirkless nature like yourself to go into one of these classes. I fear you could be hurt or possibly even killed by one of these kids with these quirks. You saw what Bakugo could do. Your arms were severely burned just by one attack. So I think it's for the best of both UA and yourself to not put you in Class 1A nor Class 1B, and you should just stay in Class 1C. Izuku would be shocked. "Nezu, you can't do this. You saw what I did out there. You saw how I easily beat Bakugo, the star student of Class 1A. You saw what I did. And yet you're just going to say I can't become a hero all because I was diagnosed as quirkless at the age of 4? All because I had a simple defect of not having a power while everyone else did? You can't do this. I beat them. I beat them fair and square, and yet you're saying I can't become a hero? Even though I beat some of the kids with the most powerful quirks, even the number 2 hero's son, Shoto Todoroki? You're insane." "I'm sorry, Izuku," Nezu would say. "It's just for the best of both of us that you don't go into the hero course. You can still become someone like a firefighter or a police officer. There are other paths to be a hero, you know." Izuku would stand up, completely not caring for what the rest of Nezu would say, as Izuku would then look back at Nezu. Then I guess I should inform you that I'm dropping out of UA. Nezu would be shocked. What, Izuku? What, Izuku? Nezu would say, as Izuku would then head towards the door. You know, this is the exact thing that would make someone become a villain, Nezu. As Izuku would then open up the door and would then walk out, leaving Nezu to think long and hard about this conversation. However, moments later, somebody would walk into this room. The room with this person that walked in had green hair, long green hair. This person being Inko Midoriya. So, did you tell my son he couldn't be in the hero course? Yes, Inko, I did. It was tough to do it, though. I can't believe you don't want him to be in the hero course. He could very well compete with all of those students. I don't think he can. I just don't want my precious Izuku to die. I don't want him to get injured and never wake up from a coma or something. It's just too. I just can't deal with it. I'm sorry, Nezu. I just can't have him in the hero course. Well, I guess I have to trust you, or I have to trust you, Inko. You are the mother of Izuku. Izuku would still be standing outside of the door. He had saw his mother walk in to the room and was completely confused, as Izuku would be standing there listening to every conversation, trying to hold back tears. His own mother had just said he couldn't become a hero, just twisted his dreams and shattered them into tiny little pieces like glass. Izuku would walk away, just completely emotionless, as he would then bump into Shinso, who had just been told by Aizawa that he was in Class 1A now, as Nezu had just informed Aizawa of that. Hey Izuku, I just got told by Aizawa that I just got into Class 1A. You? Izuku would look dead in the eyes of Shinso and would then give a simple answer. I decided not to worry about that anymore. I've decided I'm gonna be dropping out of UA, actually. No, Shinsu would be completely shocked at this. You're dropping out at UA? What? Izuku would only smile at Shinso, wishing him luck, and would then walk off into it, basically outside of the UA campus, and would walk to his mother's house. As Izuku would then start to break everything inside of it, his own mother had just lied to him and betrayed him. She said he could become a hero. She said it herself, but then crushed his dreams. It was too much for him to handle, as he would start breaking everything. Besides just leaving his room intact, that was the only thing he did. It was just crazy. He didn't know what to do, as Izuku would then sit there in a chair thinking long and hard about what he did. He knew what he did was not right, but he knew what his mother had done wasn't right either. So when his mother finally gotten home, she said, "Whoa, Izuku, what's all this mess?" As Izuku would then look her right in her eyes and would say, "You betrayed me, mother. You're not my mom anymore, however. You were just Inko to me. You lied to me, said I could become a hero, but yet you told Nesu not to put me in the hero class. You knew that was my dream. You knew it was the dream I had since I was the age of 4, and you said I could become a hero, but yet you just shattered it right in front of me and started stabbing me in the eyes with these broken shards of glass. Why would you do this, Inko? Why? I gave you love. I trusted you. You were my mother. I loved you. Why would you do this to me?" Inko would just be speechless as Zuko would burst into tears, finally letting all the pent up emotions just come right out of him in the form of tears. As Izuku would then get up and would walk past Inko, giving her one final sentence to think on. "You are no longer my mother, and the last name Midoriya is no longer mine. It's just yours." As Izuku would walk away, now no longer being Izuku Midoriya, and just being Izuku. And that's where I'm going to leave part 2 off, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy. And yeah, remember, this is Anime Outlet. I thank you all for watching, and that was just part 2 of What If Deku Stayed Quirkless. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.